Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix with James Junkin and myself, Dr. Martin. And today we've got a really special guest on the Risk Matrix, Shane Oliver. Welcome, Shane.
Good morning, everybody.
Shane and James and I are going to talk about boots on the ground field safety today. But before we get into that and we roll you on into the matrix there, Shane, I'm going to give a little shout out to our sponsor, SiteDocs. Today's workplace safety is filled with complex hazards and risks. Maintaining a safe workplace using paper or inadequate software is time-consuming and potentially unreliable. Today, over 3,000 plus companies use SiteDocs safety management software to help streamline safety operations with digital forms, ensuring compliance with real-time monitoring, saving valuable time, money, and lives. Trusted by companies large and small, from startups to multinational corporations, SiteDocs has the highest standards of security and comprehensive safety solutions. To learn more about SiteDocs and exclusive offers for Veriforce Network members, visit veriforcenetwork.com/offers/SiteDocs. And again, I'm gonna hand it over to James Junkin, but we got Shane Oliver here, and we're gonna have a good discussion today.
I'm real excited about this because Shane Oliver is one of the top boots on the ground. Don't beat around the bush. Let's get workers home safe from high hazard jobs, safety professionals that I know. So welcome to the show, Shane. You're in the matrix, baby.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm going to introduce myself as a top person, but I appreciate that.
There you go.
We both have great regard for you, Shane, and way back in the day that you and I met through some mutual colleagues, and I've been following your career. We've become personal friends, just like James and I have become personal friends. And James and I were, noodling around the other day who to have on the show to talk about what it's really, really like for safety professionals that are doing, high hazard work, number one. But really out in the field every day. So thanks for doing this for us. And James,
Sure.
you can lead off with Shane.
Shane, as people listen to this show, they sort of identify with how we go about implementing a safety management system and from the framework of safety, the paper side of safety, the management system side of safety. And I think Dr. Martin and I are pretty well read and educated in that respect. But oftentimes, there's a disconnect between the people who are planning the work and the folks actually doing the work. And you're there with the people doing the work. What are we getting right, bro? And what are we getting wrong in trying to bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs?
I think I would like to start with, first of all, you guys open this up with the sponsor, SiteDocs. I've personally never used SiteDocs, but one of the things that I'm seeing out in the field is there's some of these programs are getting to be a dime a dozen. There's a lot of them, and each one of them costs a different price. Each one of them has a different functionality. I'm seeing a bunch of them that are maybe they're originally steered towards one particular industry, and to keep up with competition, they're having to open the windows up, I guess, if you want to say that, to accommodate for more of the industries, more of the different types of job sites, whether it's construction or manufacturing process or lots of other industries. And when that happens, you get at the corporate level, these salesmen and stuff will go to all these different conventions, whether it's ASSP or National Safety Council or whatever it is. They go to all these different conventions, marketing their brand, marketing the company. And while you're there, there's going to be an exhibitor there with some brand new state of the art new company, whether it's an EHS housing management system or whatever it is. And we're starting to see more and more of these things flood into the market. I think it's a good thing. I was just visiting with a company this week, and they're still doing everything on spreadsheets. It's very redundant, but it's effective. And if you think about the algorithms behind some of these applications, it all comes from Excel. In some way or another, it all comes from Excel. So there's some companies out there that I guess their system works with Excel and it's fine, but not everybody in the field knows how to use Excel. I would call myself maybe a little more than novice, getting closer to intermediate level user of Excel, but I'm certainly not an advanced user of Excel. But so these
So,
systems I think these systems is one thing we're doing right. It can gather analytics, but it's also one of the things we're doing wrong. Because there's so many different ones, these companies get lost into spending a whole bunch of money. They give it a couple of years and come to find out it wasn't the best, and then they go spend some more money on another one. And sometimes these companies go through several of them, and it seems like the end user is us in the field. And just when you start getting used to something, then they change it, and it becomes more complicated. And overall, if you do that over the spread of a 5 or 10 year period, people just give up on the software. And
yeah.
it is the one thing that we're doing well, but it's also the one thing that's just flooded the market that's causing hindrance, I think.
So that kind of leads me, Shane, as I'm listening to talk about this, continuity is a big thing, right?
Right.
And I guess what that leads me to ask is, I know you've done, some contract work in the past. I mean, we're not having continuity in job sites. We're not bringing safety people in and letting them make a relationship and then keeping them for the long term. And I think that's part of it can be part of the problem with implementing any of those solutions.
Right.
But that puts a lot of pressure on you, boots in the ground, right?
It
Implement
does.
this new system. But what really matters, I guess, what really matters in your day to day?
It's certainly not the paperwork. I came across somebody put something on LinkedIn a few months ago back, and it was titled "Sunshine Reporting." And if one of you guys got your computer up, I would encourage you to look that up. But it was essentially a long definition talking about the overemphasis on analytics, false analytics particularly, and usually comes from some form of corporate failure or untruth. And I think we get too lost in the analytics. It's good to see that, we're able to control so many no harm events or near misses. We're able to control so many SIF potential events. It's good, but it seems like all these different applications. If I go out with a checklist that maybe has 20 different subject in it, and each one has 20 different line items to it, all of a sudden I've done 300 observations. And these companies get lost in seeing, oh, we've done 30,000 observations in the last month. That's great. Isn't that wonderful? And we're getting lost in that stuff instead
What are
of
they
what
doing
really,
about it, right? What are they
yeah,
doing about it? I guess
what are they doing about it? Right.
that's what I ask, right? Because I'm the kind of girl that walks through a site and I see something and I say something, right? I mean, and I kind of gather that that's James too, like, and it's you, right?
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between that and book safety, right?
Right.
I can make an observation, right? But the paperwork is secondary.
Right.
James, do you have
Well, I think there's a tendency to fall into the routine, the complacency. Metrics are important because they give us a way to gauge success. But at the same time, metrics have been around and observations have been around going back into the 1970s. But they're only as good as the people who are putting the data in. Back when I was in school many years ago, they used to call this garbage in, garbage out. And are we getting to the point where we're so paperwork intensive? We need to fill out this form. We got to get this form. We got to get this report. We got to get this in. That we're missing opportunities to actually interact with the human beings that are doing the job, the folks that have the potential to be injured. Are we missing that?
You know, the last software program I was working with had a spot in it to document the near misses. They called it no harm events. Our company did, but it's the same thing. But you're not just documenting that stuff. It gives you an opportunity to conduct a full investigation on the event. And when we talk about proactive safety, that's where I think we're really missing is we're not exploring these no harm events or these near misses. And part of that's because the near miss tool in itself has been so heavily abused that nobody knows what to do with it. When it starts off with, trying to encourage our guys to report this stuff and it turns into somebody gets in trouble, that'll be the last time they tell you anything. And I think that data collection is important, but if you're not going to do anything with it, then it's not important. But by exploring and doing the investigations, then we can assign action items to supervision or whoever it is that needs to assign those action items to. But then we're stuck again with, are they going to follow through with those action items, or are they just going to check the box and say we'll get to it next week? And that really depends on the culture of the company, I think. When we were talking on the phone earlier, I was thinking, what is one of the biggest problems that we've got in the field right now? And Linda, when we first met, it was during the COVID era. So everything was kind of shut down and pay scales went down and things. And I think when we came out of that COVID area, it was like a bomb went off. And next thing you know, there was really big jobs busted out everywhere and, jobs requiring lots and lots of contractors. Everything just hit it. And a lot of these companies, where they started off with maybe 500 employees, now they've got 4,000 employees, and we've muffin topped the foundation of our cultures. As active as they want to be, and in their hearts, they really want to do well, but they just can't keep up with it. We've got so many different things going on, so many different moving parts. We've got these small companies and now become large companies. They went from, $500,000 a year companies to, in excess of $1 billion. They're blooming and they can't keep up with it. And then the people that are running these jobs are some of the old hats that are used to doing things a certain way, and they're not adapting to the change. And then that's getting left on us, the safety people. We got to be the coach, and we got to be the mentors, and we got to teach, and we got to train. And I'm just one person. I can't fix everybody. Certainly can't fix a 4,000 person operation.
Well, I like one of my favorite quotes is by Henry David Thoreau, way back when. And he said, men have become the tools of their tools. And so I think you need technology and good technology in order to maximize the abilities that you have as a safety professional in the field. Where would we be without the 4-gas monitor? That's technology, right?
Right.
Where would we be without the personal computer? Where would we be without, the advances we have in training programs today? They help leverage technology. But at the same time, if I'm hearing you right, let's don't get so enamored by the technology that we forget it's still safety, still about identifying hazards, determining what risks are, putting controls in place, and getting workers home safe from these hazardous jobs.
Oh man, I
Right.
thought of a great analogy. Can I put it in here?
Yeah.
So I think you both know, and probably anybody who's ever listened to anything that I've ever been on, I talk about the human side of safety and talking about like making connections with people, and you have to have all those connections. You have to have that organizational culture in place, right? That's the block that the lever moves, right? So you can have all the levers you want to move the block, but if you don't have the block to move, to push down the road, right? Or to topple over, or to fry up. It doesn't matter if you have a 4-gas monitor. It doesn't matter if you have site docs. It doesn't matter if you have subcontractor. It doesn't matter because you're just using a lever to move nothing, right? And so I think technology is great, but we've gone so far down this road, and I think this is again, I'm putting words in your mouth, Shane, but this is where we've gone. Is we've overemphasized the levers that we're going to use to make us better, and we're not even making ourselves whole in the first place, right? We're not making a thing to move.
Well, I get,
Makes sense?
when I go through interview process, I get a lot of potential clients ask me, how good are you with, some certain software? And sometimes they'll name off one I've used, but at the end of the day, my answer is they all pretty much do the same thing. It's, I'm smart. I was born into safety during the beginning part of the technological era, I guess, of gathering data, doing the digital observations and stuff. So I've had my hands on a bunch of them, but they all pretty much do the same thing. So, some of these companies are more fond of one than the other or whatever, but they all pretty much do the same thing. It's what are we doing with the data?
Mhm.
And, to your point of the human part of it, I was on a job last year and it was still pretty greenfield. But we got to the point where there was going to be a lot more aerial lifts used. And for 3 days, I had to argue with the management about whether or not a spotter is needed. Well, what if the lift is way over there and they're not around anybody? And I said, what is the primary purpose of the ground person with the lift? Well, to make sure they don't bump into anything. They name off all this different stuff. And I said, you're all incorrect. The primary purpose of that person is to get somebody down if something goes wrong while they're up top. And then all the rest of the stuff is correct answers as well. But the primary function is to get them down. If you
Right.
got somebody way over there, yeah, they're not going to bump into anything. The likelihood of something really going wrong is pretty low unless it's something personal or some kind of mechanical failure with the machine. But still, if they're way over there, how do you get to them? And by the third day, I just asked, guys, why do we have to continue arguing about this for 3 days? The bottom line is, before you send your people out to work, ask yourself, is this the safest way I could be doing it? And if that answer is no, you need to find something else.
Mhm.
And it was just a lot of nonsense arguing about some really basic stuff. And at the end of the day, they weren't willing to work off of best practice. It was either in our policy or it was in the regulation. They wanted to see it on paper. And I finally had the site superintendent, I told him I've never worked around a group of leaders like this that was this in tune with the company policies. They had everything on their phone where they could look. You'd go and tell them something. First thing they do is bust out the policy, read, show me where it says that. And he told me, you know why that is, right? And I said, why? First of all, so we know what we can do. And second of all, so we know what we can get away with. And that
Wow.
in itself spoke volumes to that particular individual. Because see what I can get away with means in terms of a class A leader, class B leader, class C leader, you're going to be a C and that's all you're ever going to do. You're going to do the bare minimum, the bottom line of what's required, but you're never going to go out on a limb and say, is this the best decision I can be making?
So you
And
circumvented my question, Shane. I was going to say, is it laziness? Is it thumbing the system? Is it post-COVID, we don't have enough people to provide adequate spotters? Is it, but really what you're saying is it's just plain old, I don't care. I don't
it's
care.
pretty,
But
I mean, pretty basic.
I care enough to tell you that I know how to not care well,
That's,
right?
and I think it's pretty basic. I mean, do you care about these people that are working for you or not? If you cared, you know, you would go out of your way to figure out, come talk to me. I wasn't going to charge these people a bunch of money. I wasn't going to get into their bonus at the end of the job. I wasn't out here spending a lot of money. A lot of times the best answer is the easiest answer. And you just got to put a little effort into it. Sometimes you might have to spend a little bit of money, but I'm not that safety guy that's going to go out and make you spend $100,000 on some contraption that's just going to get used once and thrown back into a Connex. I mean, there's a whole bunch more answers to
Amen.
it than that. There's it's pretty basic, and I really had a hard time with that leadership team just because they wouldn't do it. And some of these guys have worked in certain powerhouses and refineries, building on expansions or something like that, and there the rules are really rigid. What really bothers me is when you come into an environment where the rules aren't quite as rigid, and it's like none of that stuff ever even happened. It all
Yeah,
goes out the
that's
window.
that's been my experience too. Coming from the oil and gas industry, we have rules, we have policies, we have enforcement mechanisms, whether you're working downstream, midstream, or upstream. But once you get into some more of these general industry type verticals, man, is I say this all the time. We got challenges in the oil and gas industry, but man, it's like we're 25 years ahead of some of these other industries in hazard identification and controls. It's like it's foreign. Is that been your experience?
It's I don't know about that, but when you switch from construction to general industry, if I took a job tomorrow and marched straight into some manufacturing plant, what I've seen there is somewhere along the way, somebody spent a whole bunch of money on getting some, high cost consultant or something came in there and created these big policies and stuff.
Hey man,
I
watch
like
that. That's me, bro.
well, but somewhere along the line, somebody spent some money on a you or a Linda, and now that they've spent that money, it's that way for now and forevermore. I like Sam Goodman's book. He talked about stacking rules on top of rules on top of rules, and then nobody goes back and clears out the old stuff and see what's relevant anymore. That section of the plant may not even be running anymore, and they just get lost in it. They spent so much money. But the flip side of that is you get safety people that come in. Look, I'm not gonna sell myself as a safety director at this point. I would consider myself mid-level management at best. But these folks, now that you've been a manager for a little while, in my mind, I tell myself, oh, I could be a director. I could do what you do. And they end up spending all this different money with these plants. And at best, they make lateral moves. Seldom does it ever amount to being anything advanced or anything like that for the better good. It just ends up being lateral moves. And they want to make, safety people, we want to make all these different changes, immediately walk into a place and see all the stuff wrong. And we immediately want to make all these changes. And ideas cost money most of the time. But you got to ask yourself, is this going to further advance the system, or is it just a lateral move? And these companies get tired of spending money. Good safety people come in and they get shut down because their ideas aren't much different than anybody else's ideas were. And we give up. We walk away, and it makes a plant go from, we started in 1950 and now it's 2024 and we still got 1950 rules going on. And at the end of the day, the part nobody ever wants to say out loud, I don't care how many posters and signs and quotes they got on their walls, production's the bottom line. Get the stuff out the door.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. I'm fond of saying this to people. Safety is not number one. My product I'm not producing is safety, right? It's
Right.
not. It's whatever product and services that we're selling. I mean, I'm a safety consultant. I guess you could say my product is safety. But for everybody else, whatever product they're generating is necessary for the viability of the company. So to say safety is number one is a misnomer. But I'll say this: good companies, forward-thinking companies, companies that understand, have safety at least as equal to production and quality. Because you show me a company
Right.
that has bad safety, I'll show you a company that's got production delays. I'll show you a company that's got quality issues. I'll show you a company with cost overruns. So they all kind of work together within the system. And, I've gotten in trouble for my views on safety culture and Dr.
Wait,
Martin's
what?
views on safety
Wait.
culture.
You in trouble?
All the time. You can't be a
Come on.
safety outlaw if you don't get in a little bit of trouble, right?
The Safety
Right.
Outlaw Club.
So I like challenging the status quo, and I think everybody on this call likes to challenge the status quo.
Sure.
But one of my big, I guess, thought process around changing terminology from safety culture to organizational culture is when we say safety culture, then that puts it back on you, Shane.
Right.
Okay. When we say organizational culture, of which safety is part of that, then it's not so siloed. It's equal with everything that we do. And I don't have a big philosophical debate about safety culture. And if people want to use that term, I'm not going to go off on those people or think bad about those people, But I think when we silo things in safety without looking at it as an integral part of the overall organization, that's how we end up in situations where, safety people don't fully appreciate the business aspects necessary to keep our company viable. We don't know how to talk to business leaders. We don't understand and can't communicate ROI. So there are a lot of things that go in, I think, as a safety profession we can improve upon. And I want to get your reaction to this. Are we closing the gap between the folks who plan the work and the folks who do the work, or are we widening the gap? In other words,
I don't know if what I've been experiencing in the last couple of years, I don't know if we're doing either one. I think there's just gaps. I think there's walls. To your point about safety, quality, productivity, I think there's walls in between all. The last job site I was on in Georgia, I shared an office with the quality folks, and I shared with them something, a company I worked for a couple of years ago, and I know this isn't the platform to be dropping names out and stuff, but during my onboarding process, I had to go to all the department heads and introduce myself, and they introduced themselves to me. When I got to the senior director over quality, he shared with me something that before he took over the company, they had some 6-digit number worth of rework every year they were having to do. And when he discussed this idea of culture, you see the circular pattern of safety, arrow to quality, arrow to productivity, arrow to safety. He got to thinking about that. And just like you said, you could have a company that's got all the production, but quality and safety fail. Now you're going back and reworking. We killed somebody. Somebody got real bad hurt. We didn't make any money on that job.
Yeah.
You can add the productivity and the quality to it, but we still had somebody die, or still somebody got really bad hurt.
You can't sit on a 3-legged stool with 2 legs.
Right. So
Yeah.
to shorten the whole thing up, when he took that to the owner of the company spread this word out to everybody, and he shared his expectations with everybody, all the levels of leadership. He didn't want to have any of those three things. You have quality and safety, but you come in 6 months behind schedule, you're still losing money.
Right.
There's a lot of things that go on with that, and that company really embraced that to their overall culture. And the leadership, they weren't going to let their guys go out and do crazy stuff. The safety wasn't going to go out and let anybody do crazy stuff. We were able to collaborate with each other, and one of their core values was, at the leadership level, you're sitting in a conference room with 10 different people. We all collaborated with each other. It meant something. One voice by the time it was over, and everybody understood. And I thought that was probably one of the most profound conversations I ever had with anybody at an upper level leadership. And I've carried that with me for the last couple of years, except that I walked into a company that is muffin top. Like I said in the beginning of this, they went from a thousand people in their company to now they're at 4,500 people in their company, and they really want it, but they're not doing it. And I had a friend of mine point something out to me. Maybe they don't know how to do it. Maybe they don't know how to come back to the, I was describing communication gaps from the upper level leadership to the executive level, particularly to the owner. And the bottom line was, maybe they didn't know how to say something to them. And that might be the case. I don't know. Bottom line is, they hired me to manage safety, not to manage the whole organization. That's a hard thing to do when you care. I'm not there to manage the whole organization. I can't change all that stuff, but nobody else is changing it either. And that's why I said, I think that we're neither closing nor opening the gaps. They're just gaps. And I'm wondering if people just don't know how to overcome those gaps.
Well, I'd like to think a lot of things are due to lack of understanding, knowledge, experience, as opposed to I don't care. There's not a safety management system ever been designed for I don't care, right? At any level.
That's why I said they don't know. And I listen to you guys, various podcasts or whatever, and I listen to you guys. You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And it's the problem when you don't know what you don't know, you're also not willing to admit I don't know. And that's the thing that I see out in the field. What was that thing I sent you the other day, Linda, that says ignorance begets confidence more often than knowledge?
Yeah. I'm going to go back to this, right? It takes everybody to build something. Okay. And I've got my it depends, and James loves that.
I knew you were fixing to say that.
I knew it. He stole my it depends. He's going to steal this analogy now, but if you build it, they will come. You can't move, you can't shape, you can't change, you can't improve something you do not have. Okay. And so bringing in a consultant, bringing in a new safety guy, firing the old safety guy, interchanging the parts, that's not going to work until everybody decides, right? Or management tells everybody they must do it, and they get rid of the ones who don't want to do it. And you build something to move, shape, push, change, improve, etc. Right?
Right.
And there's no software in the world that's going to do it. It's just not, right? It takes people. It takes
Well,
real people.
I've been asked in an interview before. I was interviewing for a safety manager position for a plant, and they said, well, there might be times where the president of the company or the vice president of the company comes and you might have to talk with them. What are you going to do? And I answered, it depends. What are they there to talk to me about?
Yeah.
You would think if they actually cared about the safety and well-being of their people, they would want to talk to me regularly.
Right.
So, each person puts their pants on one leg at a time.
Right.
It's not that big of a deal. It's when folks get scared because the president's coming or whoever's coming. If they really cared, you'd think they'd want to come over and talk to me.
Well, I think
And
one thing is being a senior leader in an organization. I've been the CEO of something ever since the late 1990s, and I came out of operations and executive management. And the one thing that I think all senior leaders have to understand is the higher up you go in your organization, the less you really know what's going on. Okay. When I was in the military, we did this all the time. The admiral's coming. So we're hiding stuff, putting in storerooms, cleaning stuff up. That's not the way it looked the day before the admiral came, and it's not going the way it looked the day after the admiral came. So we're not getting to see reality. And I think if I had any advice to field safety folks and to senior management, get out of your office and go to the process. Talk to the people who do the job. Talk to people like Shane that are managing safety at the end of the end of the spear, right?
Tip of the spear.
At the tip of the spear, because I can create you a very nice safety management system. Looks good on paper.
Beautiful.
But if it's not being effective, if you can't implement it, if it's devoid of reality, we're actually not helping. We're making things worse. Right? We're making things worse. So
just looking around in the field, I think a lot of changes could be more verbal, behavioral based changes than monetary or project. This is going to be a 9-month deal or a 3-week shutdown is going to have to take place. And most of the time, the stuff's just verbal. In a working plant, what do you got to do to get the guys to honk horns when they're coming around the corner or coming up to intersections? That's verbal. That's not you got to buy a different kind of forklift or get a new contract with Crown. I mean, that's all verbal and behavioral based. But if they're not going to do it, then what? And that's really probably the biggest struggle is these senior people have to get out in the field. Like you said, in the military, the general's coming. Exactly to that note, I was working in a steel mill a few years ago back. And this fella told me that they were preparing for the president, vice president come do a tour. There was going to be all these people, VIPs or whatever. So they spent a week repainting the lines on the floor, repainting everything. Steel mill's a dirty process.
Yeah.
The guy came in and talked to the roller. First thing he said is, "What have y'all been doing?" Well, he said, "Y'all ain't been rolling, have you?" Because he can look around, he's seen all the fresh paint everywhere, and it's a dirty process. There shouldn't have been brand new fresh paint and fresh paint smell. It should have been dirty, filthy, at best watered down or something. But he knew just from looking at it. Y'all ain't been rolling, have you? That's a whole week in a steel mill is a lot of money lost of not running. And again, it's just that disconnect. Yeah, and for what? To put on the showmanship? I'd rather if you were the owner of the company, come in and see us dirty and hitting it than standing around waiting for a pizza party or whatever.
Let me
come
ask
out and
you
see
a
what's
question.
really going on.
I don't want to call this, I hate to use the word trendy, because I am passionate about getting people home safe from high hazard jobs, from any jobs, right? Because my family is a family of blue collar workers, and they're the ones that are not coming home. And right now there's this big emphasis on shifts, as if there shouldn't have been a big emphasis on shifts always. but
Mhm.
SIFs are trendy right now. And you hear people talking about, let's focus on the stuff that kills you. And I somewhat agree with that a little bit, but is that really filtering down to the task level? Or are we just talking about it? Are we having any significant changes at the task level that's going to reduce serious injuries and fatalities?
Well, the company I was just working with, we had a program called Intellex, and Intellex is one of those SIF-based deals, and they were going through a organizational cultural change. They want to focus on SIFs. As safety people, we've all heard nobody likes a safety cop. Well, they built this program in a way to figure out what are our high risk tasks. And in the past, over a period of time, they evaluated what tasks were getting people hurt. And that's how they identified those high risk tasks. What I saw from the data collection side of it, looking at analytics, is our guys didn't want to go out and tell on each other. In order to do that right, you would have to go not necessarily evaluate your own groups, you'd have to go evaluate other groups. So nobody's going to go out there and tell on each other. Nobody's going to tell on their own group. And we had one of our checklists was work area, slips and falls, stuff in the walkway, things like that. And that became the catch-all for when somebody didn't want to do their required amount of SIF observations in a week, they just drop in work area. And essentially they're becoming their own safety cop. We intentionally didn't have a PPE section in these observation checklists because there were some high risk tasks that required certain PPE, but we didn't want to have a whole category of gloves and glasses and hard hats. I've learned that even as a consultant, I could fly into a job site, run across the whole place in 30 minutes and write down all these different, I saw 3 people without glasses on, 12 people without gloves on, that doesn't require any real thought. It doesn't require any problem solving skills. It really doesn't even require any interaction with people. I just walked through and checked off a whole bunch of boxes and ran out. But did I fix anything? No. It's walking up and say, hey, buddy, what you got going on here? Talk to them for a little bit, be a human with them for a little bit, and then talk to them about what they're doing wrong and how that can impact you.
Makes a big
Again,
difference.
I don't know. SIFs is that terminology has become new to me in the last about 2.5 years or so. I get that the Heinrich pyramid has been debunked. I totally get that, but I still do believe that the little things build up and eventually become big things. You get enough of those little things go on, and eventually they do become big things. But
I agree
sometimes
with that, Shane. And let me say it this way. You cannot focus entirely on SIFs if you don't have a mature safety management system that's taking care of the things you're talking about right
there. Right.
there. Okay? SIF incidents are pretty rare.
Is it a safety management system,
I mean,
though, or is it a production management system?
Okay.
And that's why I said I don't think we're closing or widening.
We have 6,000 people, 5,000, 6,000 people that perish in the workplace every year. And that's horrible. It is. And frankly, it makes me angry because most of them can be prevented, right? But from that standpoint, compared to the actual number of people that are working every day, it's pretty statistically low. And I think there's a tendency now to say, and it's trendy, we're going to stop worrying about compliance. We're not going to worry about whether they wear their safety glasses. We're not going to worry about they're in their PPE. We're just going to focus on this stuff that kills you, okay? Well, would it not lead up to that if we don't take care of these fundamental things that are in safety? I understand what they're saying.
The message comes out as,
go ahead.
The message comes out as, I don't have to do this anymore.
And that's the wrong message.
Nobody's going to say anything anyway, so it doesn't matter if I do this anymore. So it's not. I don't believe that's a safety management system. I believe that's a production management system. We are dictating. When I say we, doesn't necessarily mean us, but it is being dictated. Do I have to do this or do I not have to do this anymore?
Right.
Are they looking or are they not looking?
That's why I think before you can get to if you're going to get to a SIF-focused safety management system, you still have to have something to build off of because those little things matter. Now, Jimmy twisting his ankle and ending up at the emergency room tonight is not going to keep me up awake tomorrow, right? But that doesn't mean I want to be satisfied that I got 10 Jimmies out there twisting their ankles and ending up at the hospital. You know, it's a business to begin with, and it's not focused on worker health. So we in safety tend to jump on these trends a lot. Whatever's trendy, whatever.
Well, I had somebody share with me a couple of months ago his thoughts on this, and the idea of we had a minor little first aid, or we had a big first aid. No, you just had a first aid. We had a minor little injury, or we had a big injury. No, you just had an injury. And the bottom line is, it's not okay with anybody to be getting hurt. And to categorize these things as, you know, small, medium, or large incidents is incorrect. And it goes on out in the field. It goes on in the world of safety. It goes on everywhere. It depends on how deeply do I want to dive into an investigation? How many action items do I want to put out on somebody? How many are they willing to take over? And so we start saying, oh, we had a minor little thing, but it was no big deal. You know, I know we're going to run out of time here for a minute, but I wanted to share something out loud. 3 weeks ago, I had a young man had 3 fingers cut off. And before that, last year, I had an older gentleman got his arm smashed between a 65,000-pound load. I was out of state before I got to that job site. But the safety coordinator that was working with me, he called me almost every day after that man got his arm smashed. And I kept telling him, you got to find some place to put that. You can't let it haunt you like that. Find some place to put it. And the amount of stuff that I carry around with me individually, the fatalities and the gruesome injuries, I'm lucky enough to have found some place to put that. But 3 weeks ago, when that young man got his fingers cut off, something happened. I was the one there. I was the one there with him. I was with his wife. His family was there. And the young man hadn't been wearing gloves. So I'm looking at his paw in the air. He's got gauze around where they were trying to stop the bleeding. And the first thing I noticed was his hands were black. He's a mechanic. And I told his wife, when they take him to surgery, the first thing they're going to have to do is scrub those hands. And that's going to be something that he never forgets. And of course, they put him under and all that, so he probably didn't feel that. But what he did feel is when he came back around, and they rolled him out of surgery. I was sitting in the waiting room of the ICU, and he was still under a little bit. It was about 20 minutes later. The nurses came in and said, "You can go in and see him. He's awake now." And when I walked in that room, that young man was in so much discomfort. I mean, feet's wiggling, I could feel it in my toenails how bad he was hurting. And this flood of emotions came out. And then that's when the thoughts really occurred to me that when somebody gets hurt, more of the time than not, it's a safety professional that had to escort him to the hospital. It's a safety person that had to take him there. The safety person's having to call the family. The safety person's having to comfort the family. It's the safety person that gets to see this person when he comes out of surgery. Sometimes there's supervision there, but most of the time it's a safety person. And this flood of emotions hit me. And when I came back to the plant to share with the groups, the first, second, and third shift, I told them, I can tell you this story as colorful as possible, but you weren't standing there to see that young man and see the discomfort he was in. And like I said, I could feel it in my toenails how bad he was hurting. And that had a more profound effect on me than any other thing that I've seen in my career. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just because of the amount of stuff that I've learned over the years. I don't know, but the way that the emotions hit me this time was a lot different. And to see a company that just doesn't care. Well, we got him back to work. We got away from the lost time. We didn't have as many lost time days. All these different things that companies do. If they spent as much time trying to actually prevent the recordable injuries as they do trying to figure out ways to get out of them, it'd be a lot better situation out in the field.
Amen.
I told a guy one time he wouldn't just come out and say it. He was beating around the bush, so I just said it for him. I said, "What you're asking is the wrong question. You're asking me how do I cover up my recordables, when you should be asking why do I keep getting my people hurt."
Right. And in this case, I really had to figure out what went wrong and what can we do different. And then it occurred to me that with this, I'll go back to what we started off with this boom in the industries, money everywhere, big jobs everywhere. We gotta have a lot of shade tree craftsmen out there, a lot of shade tree laborers, a lot of shade tree craftsmen. They don't know. In this day and age, people just can't afford to go to school and go to work at the same time and take care of their families. You have to do one thing or the other. I mean, your plate has to be clean if you're going to be in school. And even trade school. I mean, it's hard to keep up with this stuff if you're trying to work and go to school at the same time. So training isn't the answer. I mean, what am I supposed to train this young man on? What he should have done was take loose the bolts of that electric motor and slid it forward. That would have took more time. But what he really did is what he saw somebody else do. And probably that person that he saw do it has done it 1,000 times that way. Did it wrong. But what are you supposed to do? And you just can't. That was a third shift guy. It happened at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can't have upper management there at 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, what
No,
really?
but you
What do
can
you
have
do?
processes, and you can have procedures, and you can audit those processes, and that sometimes becomes what the safety professional ends up having to do. When reality, there's not enough of us, Shane. There's really not. So somebody emailed me last week from University of Kentucky, and they asked me, what's the ratio of safety professionals to folks in the field? And I said, this is kind of anecdotal. I haven't done a lot of empirical research on that, but here's the thing. Anywhere between 50 to 100 employees per safety professional. I've seen it even be
or more. Or more.
You could feature it like jailers to inmates is pretty much the same. You get 1 or 2 safety professionals per 100
That's
plus
a good
employees.
analogy. That's a good analogy.
So the ratio is overwhelming.
So it can't be my job as a safety professional. I can audit the process, but safety has to be an integral portion of operations. So if I was doing that investigation, at some point I would look at, hey, this design of this process, do we have a process or is it in everybody's head? Because I think one of the reasons that you're seeing SIF rates go up is because as we've gone through this generational change, for whatever reason, we didn't have a process. We had it in everybody's head. So when those people left, they left with our process. And, I'm a big fan of Fred Manuel, and I say it all the time. Hazards are best controlled in the planning and design of the work.
One phase of work.
Okay. And the worker's role in that illustration, a lot of people would come back and they'd blame the kid and they'd say, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that. But, Dr. Reason probably said it best. That worker's role was the final garnish to a lethal brew that had been long in the cooking. Now, when you're talking to somebody that lives in Louisiana about lethal brews and cooking, that sort of resonates with me, right? But it still goes back to, hey, safety is not and cannot be just the safety professional's job. So as we're coming down, there's a lot of tools that we can use from a technological standpoint to get data, to be able to analyze data, but it's still coaching, empowering, letting operations understand, production understand, I'm just one person, bro. I need you to embrace this and that safety be part of your total management system, your organizational culture, and not just something that I do and I check up on.
Even during COVID, I argued that safety people became the mask police. We have so much stuff to worry about in the field during a big project, especially during a quick turnaround or something. I'm not going to spend my whole day worrying about putting masks on. It wasn't something that I was wholeheartedly sold on to begin with. And there's no way I could go out onto a place and try to convince 300 people, put your mask on, and it's got to be all the way above your nose and below your mouth. There's other things that have to happen there. But we became one person trying to implement everything. A good friend of mine likes to point out the generational gaps. And I think that's what you were just alluding to a few minutes ago, was these gaps in knowledge. Linda, when you and I spoke the first time, I was talking about you have the young to mid 20s age group, and then it jumps up to the mid 30s, early 40s age group, and then it jumps again into like the late 50s, 60s age group. And in between there, you got 10 or 15 years in between generations lost. And
Right.
everybody just standing there looking up, hoping they can be as good as the next person one day. And the people at the top, they're ready to go. They're ready to be done with this. They're not wanting to teach. They're not wanting to, for years, they've always had to be teaching somebody, and you get a bunch of knuckleheads in the field that don't want to learn or think they know everything. And there's serious gaps out in the field.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't know if that's what we were looking for. I think we knew that's what you were going to say, Shane.
Yeah.
Always a great time hearing your wisdom from the field, because I know I don't get in the field as much as I used to. I know James doesn't. I want to make a final comment here that I always like to sneak it depends into the conversation. James has his 2 quotes that he says every time that are his hallmark quotes, and he said those. And so, do you have anything to add to that, Shane? Do you have a famous last words quote for us?
And I don't think I have a famous last words quote. Maybe next time we speak, I'll have something in my pocket for it. But I really enjoyed that message I gave you a couple of weeks ago, that ignorance begets confidence more often than knowledge. And that's just you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. Let's not be ignorant. Let's learn. Let's make something so that we can move it. So
That was a Charles Darwin quote, as a matter of fact.
awesome. Well, Shane, thanks again for coming on the Risk Matrix. I'm going to let James take us out. James?
Thank you to all of our listeners that join us on a weekly basis. Please follow us on YouTube and on Spotify. If you're on the YouTube channel, these drop every Tuesday, sometime around lunch. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button on both YouTube and Spotify so you can be notified when the next episode of the Risk Matrix is available. Thank you, Shane, for joining us and for your passion at getting workers home safe. And all of y'all keep getting these workers home safe from these high hazard jobs.